My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 31, and 3 months ago my own mother looked me dead in the eye at my sister's wedding, in front of 200 people in tuxedos and pearls, and asked, "Why did the caterer let us stray in?" I was standing there holding a champagne glass some waiter had shoved into my hand, wearing a dress I'd picked specifically so I wouldn't stand out. My mother has a medical degree. She took an oath to do no harm. And she called me a stray out loud on her other daughter's wedding day, after 8 years of not saying one word to me. That wasn't even the worst part of the night. By the time the band packed up, my mother's whole reputation, my sister's brand new marriage, and a secret my family had been sitting on for 3 generations were all in pieces on that dance floor. And I never once raised my voice. But you won't understand why it mattered so much unless I back up. 'Cause this story doesn't start in a ballroom in the mountains. It starts 11 years earlier, in a hallway in Charleston, South Carolina, in front of a wall of picture frames with one frame left deliberately, permanently empty. If you've ever felt like the extra kid in your own family, stick around because this one's for you. This is Stillwater's Storytime, where quiet women finally tell you what really happened. Comment where you're watching from tonight and hit subscribe because you do not want to miss how this ends. 3 weeks before my sister's wedding, a thick cream envelope showed up at my house. I sliced it open with a butter knife, half thinking about groceries, then read the names and nearly dropped my coffee. The Callahan family requests your presence at the marriage of their son, Dr. Jason Callahan, to Natalie Sinclair. My sister. I stood in my kitchen reading her name over and over, like the letters might rearrange into somebody else's. My husband Marcus read it over my shoulder and set his coffee down slow, the way he does when he already knows I'm about to make a decision he won't love. "You don't have to go," he said. "I know," I told him. "That's different from not wanting to." We made rules at the kitchen table like a contract. Go to the ceremony, sit in back, congratulate the groom, leave before anyone noticed. I picked a plain navy dress. Quiet as wallpaper. I was wrong about that plan in every direction, and the first crack showed up before I'd finished my first glass of champagne. But first you need the hallway. And the wall. And the one empty frame that started all of it. Growing up, there was a wall in my parents' house my whole family treated like a shrine. My grandfather's medical degree, my mom's cardiology boards, my dad's anesthesiology credentials, 3 generations of matching gold frames. We called it the wall, same way other families say the lake house. Sunday dinners had a routine. My mom went around the table asking what each of us had accomplished that week, grading the answers out loud like lab results. My sister Natalie, 4 years older, always had numbers ready, test scores, class rank. She was the investment that paid off. I was the other kind of kid, better at wrapping a sprained ankle than passing a chemistry final. My mom never screamed about it. Screaming was for families without standards. She just quietly rebalanced how much attention she gave me, like a stock portfolio that wasn't performing. Here's the detail you need to remember because it comes back at the very end. The summer I turned 13, a new frame appeared on the wall, empty, right below Natalie's Honor Society certificate. When I asked what it was for, my mom smiled like a loan officer and said, "That one's yours, sweetheart. Pending." The week I graduated high school, my mom booked the private room at our country club. Announcements, not celebrations, should have been my first warning. I wore a yellow sundress I'd bought myself and felt pretty for 20 minutes until my aunt said, "Well, aren't you brave wearing color?" Between the salad and the entree, my mom stood, tapped her glass, and announced Natalie had gotten into medical school. Top choice, full scholarship. The whole room rose like it was rehearsed. A waiter quietly slid my dessert in front of me while everyone's back was turned. I had my own plan, by the way, a CNA course starting that fall, brochure folded in my purse like contraband. Then my mom tapped her glass again. And of course, we should say something about Claire, too. Every face turned. She looked at me the way you'd look at an X-ray with a shadow on it. "One daughter got the brains," she said, raising her glass to Natalie. "The other got, and let it hang there, doing all the damage silence can do." A few people gave that hollow boss's joke laugh. My aunt mouthed something sympathetic, which was worse. I gave that room nothing. No tears, no scene. I finished the cake. Tasted like drywall. Later I found out I'd been cropped clean out of the family photo, not accidentally. When I asked, my mom walked me to the wall, tapped the empty frame, and said, "In this family, love is earned, Claire. That frame is waiting on you." I told her it could wait forever because I wasn't going to medical school. Something behind her eyes shut like a cash register drawer. "Then it hangs empty," she said. "And everyone who visits will know why." She went to bed. I stood in that hallway until the porch door creaked and a voice said, "Come sit with me, baby." My grandmother Eleanor was on the porch swing, 2 glasses of sweet tea already poured because she always knew. She was my mom's mother, which surprises people once they hear the rest. She'd spent 42 years as a nurse, while her own husband collected the certificates that started the wall. "Heard the toast, did you?" she said. It wasn't a question. Then she did something she'd never done. She unbuckled the steel watch off her own wrist, the one she'd timed 1,000 pulses with, and buckled it onto mine, still warm. 42 years I wore that," she said. "It sat with more people through the worst night of their life than everyone at that table combined, and it never once asked a soul their class rank." I laughed and cried at once, the only kind of crying she allowed. "Claire," she said. "Nobody earns love, baby." She stopped there, patted my hand, looked out at the dark like the rest of the sentence lived out there somewhere. I wouldn't hear the end of it for years, and not from her mouth. 10 months later, that watch was the only thing my family couldn't take back because 10 months later they threw me out. The college fund went first, $80,000 meant for whichever school would take me. My dad explained in his calm anesthesiologist voice that it had been reallocated to Natalie's tuition. "An investment goes where the return is," my mom added from the doorway. I'd seen it coming. I was 19 with my own bank account, a CNA certification finished at night, and shifts at a home care agency helping elderly folks bathe and dress with some dignity. I loved that work, which was the one thing my mom couldn't forgive. She could survive a daughter who failed toward medicine, not one who succeeded toward the help. The ultimatum came on a Tuesday, my dad staring at his shoes. Quit the job, retake my exams, get back on the family track, or leave. I packed in under an hour, 2 garbage bags, my CNA folder, Eleanor's watch on my wrist. At the door my mom said, "You're choosing to be nobody." I told her, "I'm choosing to be somebody you don't get to grade." The porch light shut off before I reached the sidewalk. My first client was a retired shipbuilder, Mr. Whitaker, 86, hands like tree bark, who couldn't manage his own shirt buttons anymore. The agency paid me $11 an hour to be his hands. I learned to shave a face that flinched, to time medications by Eleanor's watch, to listen to the same shipyard story fresh every night, because for him it always was. My family called this wiping strangers. Here's what it actually was. I held a man's dignity in both hands for 8 hours a shift, and I never once dropped it. I slept above a laundromat and kept a notebook of everything my agency did wrong. I was 19, then 20, then 22, saving every spare dollar in a coffee can like a Depression-era grandma. Then, the fall I turned 23, my actual grandmother's phone went silent. Eleanor had a stroke on a Thursday in October. I found out 2 days late, not from my parents, but from her sister, my great-aunt Jo, who tracked me down because that's who Jo is. By then, Eleanor was in hospice, and hospice has a visitor list, controlled by whoever held medical power of attorney. That was my mother. I called daily, sent my name in writing, drove 2.5 hours on my day off, and stood at the counter in my scrubs while a kind woman with terrible news in her eyes checked a clipboard and said, "I'm so sorry, honey, immediate family only." I was her granddaughter. On paper, I was nobody, and paper was my mother's home turf. I sat in that parking lot a long time, close enough to guess which window might be hers. 11 days later, she passed. I heard about the funeral from Aunt Jo after it was already over. But Eleanor had gotten one thing past that clipboard first. A week before the stroke, she'd left me a voicemail. 41 seconds. I hit play the night I learned she was gone, made it 12 seconds, Claire, honey, it's your grandmother, don't you dare delete this, and my thumb hit stop on reflex because her voice was so alive and I wasn't ready for the past tense. I kept that voicemail 5 years and never once let it finish. 6 months later, I pulled $12,000 from my coffee can and credit union, rented a 2-room office next to a dance studio, and started my own home care company. I named it Larkspur, no family meaning, I just wanted something that sounded like the opposite of a hallway full of frames. My hiring policy was one sentence: hire the ones who show up. My first contract came from a desperate discharge planner on a Friday afternoon, the only way anyone gives a 23-year-old a shot. We didn't lose a client for 2 years. 8 years later, Larkspur has 310 caregivers across 2 states, and I've got a title I still can't say without laughing at my younger self: founder and CEO. If you're building something in a cramped office while everyone who shares your last name calls it a phase, the people who wouldn't give you a seat were never who you were building for. Comment showed up if that's you, and stay close because the next phone call I got changed my last name for good. 4 years ago, an Asheville hospital called Larkspur about a patient nobody else wanted. Trauma surgeon himself got on the phone and asked if Larkspur was as good as its reputation or just newer than everybody else's. Both, I said. He laughed once like a stuck door giving way and said, "Prove it." That's how I met Dr. Marcus Bennett. He noticed Eleanor's watch and asked whose it had been. Nobody had asked me that in 8 years. Vending machine coffee turned into real coffee, which turned into 2 years of the calmest thing that had ever happened to me. He knew the whole inventory before he proposed and said the sentence that sealed it: "You already built yourself a family." The husband part's just showing up late. We married in his mom's backyard, 30 guests, Mr. Whitaker's granddaughter on fiddle. I took his name gladly. My maiden name had only ever felt like a debt. 2 weeks before that wedding, I did one old-fashioned thing and mailed my parents an invitation. The envelope came back 13 days later, not marked return to sender, opened. Someone had read every word, resealed it in my mother's handwriting, and mailed it back like a denied insurance claim. On the back in blue ink, "Don't embarrass yourself." The Marcus found me at the mailbox and went completely still reading it. "We could just be happy," he finally said. "That's the best revenge there is." I laughed and I married him and I was happy. I need that on the record. But I kept the envelope, and every December after that I still mailed a plain Christmas card signed with just my first name. Never answered, never returned, just swallowed by the same mailbox that had spat my wedding back at me. Some part of me was still standing at the bottom of that hallway, holding up everything I'd built, waiting for someone to hang it. That part of me said yes to my sister's wedding before the rest of me finished reading the invite. One more piece, and every domino is standing up straight, ready to fall. 2 years ago, that same hospital came to Larkspur wanting a founding sponsor for a new geriatric medicine fellowship. They assumed I'd want naming rights. My one condition wasn't my name. I wanted it called the Eleanor Voss Fellowship, after a nurse who worked 42 years of nights and never got a frame anywhere. My own name would appear nowhere. The hospital thought I was being modest. Truth is, I was still building a case file for a jury that was never going to convene, still waiting for my family to someday see everything I'd built and understand what they'd thrown away. The first Eleanor Voss Fellow got picked that spring, a young internist with steady hands and better manners than most, the kind of doctor who learns caregivers' names. He wrote me a thank you letter without knowing who I was. His name was Jason Callahan. I'd funded a stranger's whole career and told no one. This spring, that stranger sent me a wedding invitation because he was marrying my sister. The ceremony was beautiful, in that expensive hotel lobby kind of way. I sat in the last row with Marcus's hand over mine, watching my sister marry a man I'd accidentally helped create. My professional brain, the one that audits care plans for what's missing, started cataloging things during the recessional. Natalie was supposedly opening a dermatology practice, yet in a garden full of physicians, not one guest on her side got introduced as a colleague. No one could name the neighborhood of her grand opening. My mom steered every career question backward into old residency stories and materialized to answer any medical question aimed at Natalie herself. Any one of those is nothing. All of them together is a chart with pages missing. Then we found our table. Table 2, groom's side, engraved cards, Dr. and Mrs. Bennett. Across the room, I watched my mom run her finger down the seating chart and lose control of her own face for half a second. I'll treasure that forever. She had no idea who Dr. Bennett was. That was the terrifying, delicious center of it. 8 years without a thought about me, and now the answer sat under sacred calligraphy, and she couldn't ask anyone without admitting she didn't know. Natalie found out faster. She crossed the floor, saw the cards, went the color of the tablecloth, looked at me, then at Jason, then back. My mom appeared at her elbow, and the two of them held a summit behind a flower arrangement, hissing like a kettle. They had a problem with no playbook. They couldn't remove me without explaining me. While they conferred, a silver-haired woman in blue silk walked straight toward table 2. "Claire Bennett," said Dr. Patricia Callahan, chief of medicine, the groom's mother. Finally. Jason talks about Larkspur like it's a teaching hospital. We talked care transitions a minute, then she tilted her head and asked the question that could blow the whole night open. "So how do you know our Natalie?" I understood exactly what I was being handed. One honest sentence could detonate the marriage, the merger, my mom's whole reputation, right there between the salad and the band's first song. I picked the smallest true thing in the room. "We grew up in the same town," I said. "Small world," Dr. Callahan said pleasantly, but she was a top diagnostician, and I watched her file the pause away. Natalie got me alone by the coat check, gripped my wrist, pulled me into a stone hallway. The second we cleared the doorway, her bridal smile dropped clean off. "Whatever you told her, you're walking it back," she said. I told her exactly what I'd said. "Don't do the calm thing," she snapped, voice cracking. "You've had 8 years to ambush me and you picked my wedding?" I asked the only question I'd come for. "What did you tell them happened to me?" My sister, married about an hour, said, "There is no story. As far as the Callahans know, I'm an only child." I braced for smears. The truth was cleaner. They'd never even dug the hole. I was a line item quietly dropped off the books. "You'll leave before the toasts," Natalie went on, our mom's cadence settling over her like a jacket. "Say you got a migraine." But I noticed her hands were shaking, not jitters, hospice clipboard shaking, and her eyes kept flicking toward Jason, not our mother. A woman defending one lie looks annoyed. A woman defending a lie stacked on another looks terrified. "Enjoy the toasts," I said and walked back inside. I made it 3 steps toward table 2 before my legs carried me straight past it, out to the coat check, holding my claim ticket like a woman deciding on a train. I'd come to that wedding carrying one shameful hope, that 8 years might have loosened something. I had my answer now. There was no door, and there never had been a wall with my shape in it. Marcus found me there, read the whole calculation off my face, and just said, "Say the word, hand out for the ticket." That's when Eleanor's watch caught on my sleeve, glinting under the coat check light. I thought about a woman who walked through my mother's front door for 6 decades in a nurse's cardigan, outranked by everyone at that table and outclassed by none of them, who never once took the back exit my mother kept suggesting. Comment front door if you've ever refused somebody's back exit, and subscribe now because every domino falls in the next few minutes. I handed the ticket back. "We're staying for the toasts." Inside, a fork rang against crystal. My mom stood first, pearl gray, gave the performance of her career, and closed with the family motto, polished for export: "Everything at our table is earned. Especially our name." 200 glasses went up. I heard the sentence underneath the sentence for the first time. She'd said those exact words to me at 19, and somebody had clearly said them to her once too. She wasn't quoting herself. She was reciting. For one breath I felt something like pity. You can understand where cruelty comes from and still refuse to bow to it. Then the MC said the sentence that ended everything. And now a few words from the groom. Jason gave the kind of toast that reminds you good people are the most dangerous thing you can invite to a performance. He thanked his parents, his bride, then set his notes down and went off script. The first is my mentor. He taught me trauma surgery is mostly just showing up and showing up again. Dr. Marcus Bennett, table 2. Every Sinclair head snapped toward us. The second I only get to thank because she's finally in the room with me. 2 years ago I got a fellowship, funded entirely, named after a nurse named Eleanor Voss who worked 42 years of nights. The woman who paid for it wouldn't let the hospital print her name. Took 2 years and one indiscreet colleague to find out who she was. She built a home care company from nothing at 23, and she's sitting tonight next to my mentor because she married him. Claire Bennett. Would you stand? The applause started warm and confused. I stood because you stand when a good man asks. My mom rose too in pearl gray, not to clap. Her face went the color of old snow. There's been some sort of mix-up, she said into the microphone. Hostess laugh bolted on top. Claire is a distant relation, a complicated situation not for tonight. And Natalie, my poised, laminated sister, lost 8 years of message discipline in one blurt. You are not invited. Loud, past the microphone's edge, into 200 held breaths. Jason turned to his bride slowly, the way you turn when something's broken upstairs. Not invited? Natalie, I invited her myself. This is the woman who funded my fellowship. Her grandmother's name is on my diploma. Do you have any idea who this is? My mom, watching the structure fall, reached for rank. Jason, sweetheart, this is a family matter. Which family? Jason asked, quiet. 200 guests looked from the bride to her mother to the woman at table 2 they'd been told all night, in 100 small curated ways, did not exist. Dr. Callahan finished it. She rose without hurry and looked at Natalie with the stillness of a diagnosis landing. Natalie, you told us you were an only child. Nobody answered. That silence was the answer. My mom crossed the room, took my forearm in both hands, set at exactly the volume to reach the first 3 rows. Claire, darling, we'll discuss family matters privately. Darling. 8 years, a returned wedding invitation, a hospice clipboard with my name struck off, and I graduated to darling the second there were witnesses worth performing for. I smiled at her the way you'd smile at someone talking loud on a train about a stop they already missed. You have no idea, do you? I said gently, loud enough for the microphone she'd forgotten was still hot. About what? About anything after April. I lifted her hands off my arm the way I used to lift Mr. Whitaker's, firm, no negotiating. I didn't list my company, my title, or my employees. Excuse me a moment, I told Dr. Callahan. This dress needs some air. My mom caught me in the stone corridor. There, she dropped the performance completely. No audience, no polish, just a 59-year-old woman with her back against limestone, breathing like the air had gotten expensive. All right, she said. You go back in, tell the Callahans we've always been close, quiet but close. Say the fellowship was a family project. And then you come home, Claire. Thanksgiving, Christmas, all of it. The frame gets filled. You've earned your place. There it was, the door thrown wide open, everything I'd wanted at 19 laid out like a table set for one. All I had to do was carry one lie across the threshold. I looked at her hands while I let the offer hang. They were shaking, that tremor she'd kept hidden under crossed arms all night, the one that had ended her own surgical career and turned her into the family's judge instead of its performer. Something old cracked open just for one sentence. My own father made me recite my class rank every Sunday until I left for college, she said, flat like coordinates. I gave you kids a family that keeps score because it's the only kind I was ever given. And it worked. Look at Natalie. Her armor snapped back down. Well, she said. The Callahans are waiting. I looked at Eleanor's watch, 41 unfinished seconds sitting in my purse beside it, and I smiled. I walked back in ahead of her. Dr. Callahan asked me straight in front of both families. Before anything else, is it true? Were you part of this family? My mom stood at my shoulder, her script radiating off her. One sentence, and the door stood open behind me with every holiday of the rest of my life stacked inside it. And I heard Eleanor on that porch swing, clear as the night she said it. Nobody earns love, baby. I finally understood the assignment of my whole adult life. It was never about winning the argument. It was about leaving the courtroom. Here's everything I'll say tonight, I told Dr. Callahan, but really I meant it for all 200 of them. I was born a Sinclair. At 19 I was told love in this family is earned, so I stopped earning it. I haven't spoken to them in 8 years. Jason, you married somebody wonderful. Ask her gently for the rest yourself. It isn't mine to hand out. That line cost me the most because I did have the rest and I left it alone. Mercy is about the only revenge that leaves your hands clean. I turned to my mother, whose face was doing something geological. No, I said. The frame stays empty. I built my own wall. I took Marcus's arm, thanked Dr. Callahan, and walked straight out my sister's wedding through the middle of the aisle. Just before the doors shut, I heard one champagne glass hit the floor. We walked to the far end of the terrace and watched the party glow gold through the glass, and that's when my hands finally started shaking, the honest kind, the kind you earn. Marcus put his jacket over my shoulders and asked nothing. I pulled up the voicemail. 41 seconds. For the first time in 5 years, my thumb stayed still at the 12-second mark. And I need you to hear this, honey, because nobody ever told your mama, so she never learned how to say it back. Somebody's got to go first. Nobody earns love, baby. Love is the one thing they can't ever bill you for. You were never the empty frame, Claire. You were the whole wall and the house it's holding up. Don't wait around for people keeping score to tell you what you're worth. Come see me Sunday. Bring nothing. Click. I cried right then, the only time in this whole story. On a terrace in my husband's jacket, Eleanor's watch ticking against my wrist like a second heartbeat. Not for the family I'd lost, because you can't lose what was never handed to you. For the woman who went first. And for the 19-year-old at that mailbox who could have used those 41 seconds a little sooner. I opened my drafts, found my parents' address at the top of the Christmas list, and deleted it. Then we went home. Came apart over about 6 weeks, and I watched from a respectful distance. Callahan's checked the chart. Natalie's dermatology practice had no lease, no license, no grand opening. Her residency, it turned out, had ended halfway through year 2, not paused, ended, and everything since had been a spa job dressed up in our mother's narration. Jason filed for annulment kindly, and kept the Eleanor Voss Fellowship listed proudly in his email signature, which undid me more than I expected. My mom resigned her hospital gala committee that fall, citing family obligations. Nobody fired her. Her currency had simply gone worthless in every room that used to matter to her. My dad emailed one line that November. Your grandmother would have been proud. I've read it 30 times. Never wrote back. Here's the part one didn't see coming. 2 months after the wedding, Aunt Jo called and told me Eleanor had left a sealed letter in her keeping, dated the week before the stroke, with instructions to hold it until the right time. Inside was a deed to a half-acre with a little fishing cabin, out past the county line, that Eleanor had bought quietly with her own pension money and tried to leave me outright, before my mom, as executor, quietly folded it back into the estate and never mentioned it existed. Jo had kept the letter for years, waiting for me to be ready. I drove out there the next weekend. The porch needs new paint. There's a swing hanging off one rusty chain. I sat on it with Marcus and, for the first time in a decade, let myself finish crying instead of stopping halfway. 6 months later, on an ordinary Sunday, I looked down my own dinner table and took inventory the way Eleanor used to count a pulse, slow, thorough, grateful. Marcus at the far end, arguing football. My business partner Priya, who took a chance on Larkspur before I could pay her much. Aunt Jo, back in my life for good. Mr. Whitaker's widow, with a pie nobody asks for and everybody finishes. Jason Callahan, still a fellow, still family somehow, the one good thing I got out of that wedding without meaning to. There are 11 frames on my dining room wall now, too. I counted them once and laughed until Marcus came to check on me. Ours hold a fiddle recital, a photo of that fishing cabin, a coffee can, 2 backyard wedding pictures, and a nurse in her cardigan on a porch swing mid-sentence, saying something the camera never quite caught. Not one certificate. Eleanor's watch stays on my wrist, and her voicemail is still saved on my phone. These days I can let it play all the way through while I'm stirring dinner on the stove. If a family ever made you audition for your own seat at their table, hear me on this. Love that has to be earned was never love. It was a job with no paycheck, and you're allowed to quit a job. The table you build after that will hold every person your old family's chairs never fit. That's my story. 1 empty frame, 1 nurse's watch, and a voicemail that took 5 years to finally let finish. If somebody's made you feel like you had to earn your seat, take this as your sign to build your own table. Share it with someone who needs it, drop a comment about your table, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.